All right, welcome back, party people. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about congruent triangles. We have done similar triangles in the past, and remember when we do similar triangles, we set up proportions. But congruent triangles, it means all of their parts are congruent. So today we're going to combine congruent triangles with algebra. The most important thing about congruent triangles is this statement. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles. Well, I'm going to run out of room. Are congruent. All right. And what you really need to focus on from that are these letters. C, P, C, T, C. That's actually what we call it. We call it by C, P, C, T, C. So keep that little random phrase in your mind. CPCTC, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. What that really kind of narrows down to is this. Corresponding angles are congruent, and corresponding sides are congruent. Remember, with similar triangles, corresponding angles were congruent, but corresponding sides were proportional. So you need to make sure you're monitoring these carefully, reading the directions carefully, so that you know which type of problem you need to do. And remember, corresponding means same location. So here is an example of two congruent triangles. And what we're going to do is we're going to name all of their corresponding congruent parts. So there are going to be corresponding congruent sides and corresponding congruent angles. Now in this one, I have them marked already. That way we know for sure that all of their parts are congruent. And so we're going to figure out which sides go together, and then we're going to write a congruency statement, which is very much like a similarity statement. So we know that side PW is congruent to side DH. And we know that because they have the same marking. TP is congruent to HG. And TW is congruent to DG. All right, hopefully you're like, oh my gosh, I know, that makes sense. All right, for angles, angle P is congruent to angle H. Angle T is congruent to angle G. And angle W is congruent to angle D. But the biggest thing, like I said, is to write the congruency statement. So just like we did with our similar triangles, we're going to do here. I'm going to just go by sides, 1, 2, 3. So first we have triangle WPT, 1, 2, 3. So we need to do this one the same way, 1, 2, 3. Congruent to triangle DHG. This part is the important part. Okay, the congruency statement. Now here, there is no picture, but because we have the congruency statement, maybe I should label that. We can tell which parts are congruent. So again, let's do sides and angles. Sides that are congruent, AB, the first two letters, would be congruent to MN, the first two letters. It just goes in order. BC is congruent to NP. And AC, first and last letter, are congruent to MP, first and last letter. Now angles. Angle A is congruent to angle M. Angle B is congruent to angle N. And angle C is congruent to angle P. Any questions about that? If so, please let me know. And here's why that comes in handy. If you have the congruency statement and no picture, you can still match things up. Sometimes people like to draw the picture, but I'm going to show you that you do not need to be able to do that. Okay. So triangle BTS is congruent to triangle GHD. That means all of the parts are congruent, the corresponding parts. So BS goes with GH, which isn't going to be helpful. So I'm going to kind of tell you the strategy that I use. Here's my X. My X is way over here with GD. So I'm going to start with GD. GD is congruent, first and last letters, to BS. Hey, that works perfectly. All right. Those sides are congruent, which means their measures are equal. GD, 4x minus 11, is equal to BS, 25. Do we need these other sides? Not at all. Okay, you need to use what you have to try to figure out what you need. That's where geometry is fun. All right, so let me just double check myself. GD and BS. Yep, we should be good and we can solve now. So x equals 9. All right, that's it. That's all there is to it. So let's look at the other one. Let's look at what y is. Let me get a different highlighter so we can keep track of these together. That is not a highlighter. This is. All right, so as far as y goes, that's on angle H. So angle H is congruent to which angle? Hopefully you said T. Well, we know angle H is 7y plus 5, but nowhere does it give us angle T. And that is a small problem, but not a big deal, because what do we know about the angles in a triangle? Angles in a triangle equal 180 degrees. So we have angle S is 56. We have the measure of angle B is 21. So how can we find the measure of angle T? That one's right here in the middle. Well, we can add them up. 21 plus 56 and subtract that from 180. So it has to be 103 degrees. All right, if you're confused about that at all, let me know. Make sure you understand that. I hated when I felt like teachers brought numbers out of nowhere. It always drove me crazy. So if you kind of don't understand where I got that, please tell me so I can explain it. All right, and then we're just going to solve that tiny little guy. It looks like we got it right because this is going to come out nicely, but that's not required. 14. So you don't even need a picture of the diagram to solve a problem like this. You just need to use the congruent statement to help you. All right, let's do one more that has some algebra in it. All right, this one actually is labeled, so that's nice. The measure of angle or triangle MTW is congruent to triangle BGK. We want X and Y again. This is a problem only about angles, so that's going to be helpful. And let's see what we got. X is an angle T. So angle T is congruent to angle G, and that's 45. So we can go ahead and do that. 4x minus 3 equals 45. And solve. So x is 12. Y is over here in angle B. So angle B is congruent to angle M. But we don't know angle M, so we're going to need to go on a little hunt to find it. We do know that T is 45. Right? Yeah, T was 45. The same as G. So we're going to add up 45 plus 41 and subtract from 180, 94. So we know angle M is 94 degrees. So angle B, 11y plus 6, is equal to 94. Apparently that's not going to come out beautifully. Which is about 9. And that's making me second guess myself, like maybe I made a mistake. So let's just double check everything. Angle B has to go with angle M. Okay, so that's good. 11y plus 6 and 94 is fine. I have a feeling that when I wrote down the problem wrong, when I wrote it, I have a feeling this was minus 6 because 94 minus 6 is 88, and that would have been evenly divisible. So don't worry that this is off. It's correct with the numbers I gave you. All right, so you're going to practice with this worksheet now. I have the answers or this all filled out via a thing online, a video, but I wouldn't recommend you watch that video until you're finished with the problems yourself. What I do want to tell you about is that this has congruent problems, but also similar problems. So you're going to need to read carefully, oh, congruent, similar, similar, and set them up appropriately. Because remember, congruent triangles, all of their parts are congruent, corresponding. Similar parts, the corresponding angles are congruent, but the sides are proportional. So go through, check that. You can check your answers on the other videos, and good luck.